Ora viva, muito boa tarde. Hello, hello. Good afternoon for everyone. Today we'll be having an inquiring mind session dedicated to micro frontends. And the subject for this presentation comes from my participation on a Moonfare project. They recently made a decision to move their monolith frontend into a set of Next.js micro frontends bundled together with Webpack. Now, talking a bit about my project, because understanding the project helps us understanding why we need this shift on the front end for the Moonfare project. So Moonfare, it's a private equity. Moonfare, it's a private equity investment platform. Private equities are investments that are known to have a long spread across the time, and they tend to last like 10 years, and they have a huge barrier of entry that is the money necessary to get into this kind of funds. On the other hand, these funds tend to yield great results, and they are kind of a guaranteed investment in terms of returns. At the moment, their tech team is composed with around 60 engineers spread between Q&A, DevOps, developers, and managers. And they are bundled together in 8 feature teams and 2 platform teams. The feature teams develop features for the application. The platform teams are responsible for refactorizations and exploring new technologies to add to the project. And the application, it's composed at the moment by 4 main modules. We have the backend. It's an Express application written in TypeScript, and it's tuned up to the 11. It has all the imaginary plugins and all the complication of the degree of complexity of the backend has forced us to move through several refactorizations to ensure that we don't stumble on each other. And that's what was happening on the front end when I joined. And during the last 2 years that I've been on the project, we have worked on the backend to break them apart and build a microservice to support the backend and break that logic out of the backend. We have the cluster of microservice written in SJS that support the backend. Here, we started by creating the partnerships microservice, and then they have been spawning, and at the moment are around 10 to 12 microservices. We are about, for example, my team is about to deliver a new microservice to manage the investments. We have an admin panel. It's a React admin application that it's whatever. It's not good, it's not bad, and we have managed to survive with it. Since I joined the project, that it's been talked about scrapping it, but the amount of logic and the amount of development that already has makes that quite hard to move away from the admin panel. And the last one, it's our front end. It's a React application with years of development. It has around 4 to 5 years. At this stage, we are facing the issues that I saw on the backend 2 years ago, we are seeing now on the front end. And that was one of the biggest motivators to break this front end into clusters of micro frontends and move that strategy so that we can compartmentalize the front ends and be able to give ownership to a team of that micro front end. And that team is responsible for maintaining, developing, and deploying that front end. Now, moving a bit into what we entail for micro frontends. And here, before we move into micro frontends, I was looking for a good definition, and I like this one from Martin Fowler. An architectural style where independent delivery front-end applications are composed into a greater whole. This is extremely generic, and my first feeling when I read this quote, this quote can be applied to the backend on any kind of application. If you want to spread it into micro modules, you replace front-end by backend, and it still works. We replace backend by infrastructure, and it still works. So I try to dig a bit deeper, and the first example, and this one was mostly what I thought spawning from this this quote. It's the server-side composition, and this is very familiar to everyone. I believe everyone in this call would have the ability to build this kind of composition. We have a set of front ends, like we have, for example, in many of our applications where we have an application for the admin panel, an application for the client, an application for the partners, an application for the sellers, and we can bundle them together, and we can deploy, and we create a reverse proxy like Nginx, and we spread the traffic based on the subpath of the URL. And here in this example, we have a front end that will be answering every request to checkout. We have another front end that will be served when we are jumping into the profile, and another with the catalog. Now, with this structure, we have to take in mind that every time we jump from one route to another, we are switching applications. Every context that we have at that stage, it's dropped if we don't take necessary measures. Front-end one has one instance of React and has one instance of Redux where the data is kept. We switch to the next one. That micro front-end doesn't have an instance of doesn't have the same instance of Redux. It will create a new one, and we'll have a new store with data relevant for that. And we have to take that in mind, that we are jumping from applications, although we are just switching the URL. Now, this is more of a classic approach, and at the moment, the approach that it's taking that's becoming more popular, it's the client-side composition, and that's what we'll see on the second part of this workshop. And the idea is that I can publish a set of micro frontends, and I have an orchestrator that will be responsible for picking together all of those micro frontends and building an application that will serve the full set of micro frontends. And this container is responsible mostly to aggregate the micro frontends and maybe set up some route configuration. In this setup, we still maintain the same issues. There are different applications with different set of dependencies, and we need to be especially careful with the dependencies because they will find dependencies quite common between the projects, and we will load a different instance for each one of the projects. This is something that it's gaining popularity at the moment because we are in the position where we can share those kind of dependencies, and we will look a bit more into it next. And there is also an alternative to the client-side composition, that it's the edge-side composition. And in this case, instead of having my micro frontends deployed and having an aggregator in front that's also deployed and it's stitching together my application, I will deploy my the front ends into a CDN. I will build the projects and place them on CDN like S3. And to edge composition, I will merge the buckets together and build an application that it's built through the composition of the different front ends. And in this case, there is no active element building the applications. I place them on S3. I have a declarative way of saying that this bucket will be mapped with this route, or this bucket will be included in a part of this page. And with that definition, I will build my final page to a declarative way. Now, looking a bit now into the advantages of using micro frontends, we get the first one. It's smaller than the couple of code bases. We will define domains for our front ends, and each one of them will have a smaller code base, and we'll have a smaller set of features to test by project. And this will only affect the developers itself, that in terms of coverage and the domain and the sense that they need to have about their own application, it's smaller, it's their application. They don't need to care about the concerns of another team. So the tests and the Q&A process, it's tailored for that domain. This also allows us to have independent deploys, and this is one of the issues that Moonfare was witnessing. With the amount of development there is on the backend, we have around 9 teams developing for the front end. We start seeing that the deploys we are missing deploys. Basically, we have a release process, or a release manager starts the process, starts creating the release, merging branches, and in the end, he will release the project. What was happening is that this process of creating the release was not being an agile process. It was taking quite a lot of time to build the release, because due to amount of developments, and they will cross quite often, we will get quite a lot of merge conflicts. After the merge conflicts were sorted out, we'll have issues on the pipeline later on with tests because they were not well applied, and the release will be either blocked or delayed for quite some time. And there was no way of for us to not stumble on each other on the front end on this respect, because the application is organized on a horizontal way. There is no concern about domains. There is concern about pages and the components of those pages. And the last one, it's higher team dependencies. Again, teams will manage their applications, and they won't care as much about the other applications. So they will manage their workflow, and they will have the ability to release their own applications. And this point for me, it's the one that made Moonfare take this decision, because their vision for the whole organization is to have a set of independent teams that should be able to work on their own and release their features without depending on the other teams. And while the other aspects were known, this one is one that pulled the trigger in their vision, because to some degree the others are manageable, but this last one was the differentiator for them. It's their independence that they want to achieve. Now, moving a bit to the trade-offs that we need to do to improve a micro front-end architecture. The first one, like I mentioned, we are moving between front-ends. They don't share the store, they won't share the state, and the browser will build a completely different application when we switch pages. That way, we need to be careful how we manage data. We have a couple of strategies. We can use local storage and hydrate the store between jumps from one application to the other. But we need to be careful, because if we try to load the store all in a single, every time we jump from one front end to another, the application will serve in terms of performance. So there is some developments here, some research, to load the store partially. That's something that we already do on regular front-end applications, but for micro front-ends, it's become a need. Another need when working with multiple front-ends, it's the necessity of having the components all bundle up together on a single source of truth. Otherwise, they will diverge right away. As soon as they are in different code bases, it will be hard to keep the consistency across the application. So all the shared components and all the shared styles of our application need to be pulled into a single source of truth that can be pulled into a package, into the project. That can be a package, or it can be a module or federated module, like we'll see later on. Another one needs to manage the dependencies. Like I mentioned before, we need to share those dependencies. Otherwise, we'll load the full application, and each one of the applications will load React. And every time we are jumping, we'll load React or try to use the cached version for that project, not the cached version for the other project. So we at least need to load an instance for each one of the micro frontends. And that will also take a toll on the loading of the project. Oops, sorry. Another one, maintaining pipelines to deploy and to run tests over our application requires more people to maintain and require more investment in infrastructure to support this architecture. And the effort to orchestrate will be higher, and we'll see that later on also when we are building the project. And the last one, it's about how we organize these projects. On the case of Moonfare, they were straight and they want to move into a monorepo. We'll have a micro front-end monorepo, and each one of the subfolders will have one of them will be the current application, and then we start building Next.js applications alongside the current application and import them into the aggregator. Now, moving a bit into tools and frameworks that we have at the moment at our disposal. And these 4 tools, they are displayed in a range of more permissive to less permissive. So the Webpack model federation, this one, it's quite agnostic and doesn't have anything to say about the module that we are trying to export or the module that we are trying to import. It doesn't matter if they are React applications, Angular application, Vue, backends. There is no limitation for what we can export and consume with Webpack model federation. Single SPA starts being a bit more opinionated on the host, on the aggregator of the applications. They have a framework that will aggregate the different frontends. It doesn't say anything about the frontends. They can be, again, React, Angular, Vue. There is no concern about them. There is a concern only about the aggregator and the application that will import them. And that's where single SPA needs to be instantiated and configured to consume the different micro frontends. Now, the last two, Parallel and Bit. Bit, it's the one that is slightly more known than Parallel. They're already quite opinionated about the module that we want to expose and the modules that we want to consume, or the micro frontends that we want to expose, and how the aggregator will consume them. They already have a set of rules in how to build the micro frontends, how we should package them, how we should export them, and how the host, the aggregator, will consume them. And Bit the same way. The main difference is that Bit flavors a component-driven design in which we don't build pages, we build components that then on the aggregator are tied into a route, while Parallel it still sees things as we build micro frontends that are tied with a route. So in that aspect, one flavors more if we build pages, while the other flavors that we build components to aggregate. And now moving into what we will do on the second part of the exercise, we'll pick Webpack Model Federation, and we'll export a few components from one application and export that application into a host so that we can host our micro frontend in a different hub. Now moving into Model Federation. Now, Model Federation, it's an architecture, and I was looking for it. I love this quote from the creator because it tells me nothing about what Model Federation is besides the JavaScript architecture, but I know that he created, he prototyped, he coded, and with the help of the founder of Webpack, it managed to make it with Webpack. So all I know is that something related with Webpack. I don't know anything else. And JavaScript architecture, it's as unprecise as it could be. Now, try to be now a bit more precise. Let's look first at Webpack. So Webpack is application bundler. It builds our application into something that we can push to production. It's someone that usually is responsible for uglifying, minifying, and ensuring that our code base is as small as it could be. It bundles the application through an entry point, and it will build a dependency graph that will tell exactly which function, which image, which component it's really necessary for the application. And with a bit of tree shaking, we can create a build that only has the necessary code to run it. So if we export a single function from a library, that function will be present, not the rest of the library. And the building process, and this to me is the more annoying bit. It's the building process run to plugins. And I have spent my fair share dealing with these plugins, and they can be pretty straightforward, or they can be a bit messy. So I have kind of mixed feelings with Webpack. I worked a bit with it, but the bundling process with the plugins is something that I didn't enjoy at the time. But again, Model Federation, it's a plugin for Webpack, and we will try to configure this plugin in order to provide a remote application that can be consumed, set up a consumer and point to the producer, to the provider, and consume that module. And bear with me, that's a module, a federated model can be a consumer and consumes something that's provided, as well as providing something else to consume. And that's what we'll try to do. And the dependencies can be shared across the applications, and they can be incrementally loaded. When we declare a federated module, we have to express its dependencies so that the consumer can provide that dependencies, and the module doesn't need to depend on them. So we also see that. Now, moving into another module that we use, it's Next.js. Next.js, it's a React framework. It's been gained quite a lot of popularity in the last few years. And while I was working with Model Federation and Next.js, I felt really comfortable creating micro frontend in Next.js and then exporting them into another Next.js host. And that's what we'll try to do at the end of the presentation. And Next.js, for me, the biggest selling point, or what I enjoy the most about Next.js, it's the simplicity of creating a component and exposing that component into a route. They have a page layout where you create files into the pages folder, and it will map each one of the files that we have on our file system into a route that we can open. And alongside it, it has support for internationalization, which is also a pain, and it's nice that they have that built in. And it can manage already from the get-go a couple of style sheets elements, and also has some built-in elements to optimize images so that our final builds have images that are a bit more efficient to download. And now we will move into the exercise, the practical part. Let's move into the exercise. So give me a few seconds. If you guys have questions, now will be a good time to make them. Please raise your hands if you have questions. I'm not hearing Luis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had the microphone muted, like physically. I forgot. I was wondering when you were talking about sharing sharing context across different applications, you mentioned the use of local storage. Isn't that a bit insecure, or can that be like a bit problematic? Because any user can mess with the local storage, for example.
Yes, the user can, but local storage is shared by domain. So all the applications can share the same local storage instance, and local storage, it's only accessible to that domain. Other domains should not have access to that information to store in local storage. And we usually use local storage to store authentication token. Nothing is more precious than the authentication token. So it's safe to keep that information there.
Also, I was going to ask if I don't know how the research went, but did you come across, for example, in-memory databases? For like example, I think Memcache is one that you can basically set up a in-memory database for the browser.
No, I didn't come across that strategy. To share data, the strategy was event emitters, so that you can place an event on the browser, load a different page, and the different page will consume the event. That's one of the strategies. The second one to local storage, and another one to query string parameters into the next application that we can provide some input to the next. Yes.
But so using stuff like, I mean, I can only think of Redis or something like that, but I know there are some in-memory databases for browsers that then like try to solve issues like that, I think. And maybe that would be useful in this scenario.
Yes, this scenario could be useful to cache some data that we will need across the applications, yes. But then again, that information won't be on the browser and will need to be fetched.
Yeah, yes.
So we always have that trade-off there in a way that we need to fetch the information. Let me close this. Everything. Okay, it would be nice to have two screens now to share, because I cannot see there. Okay, I'll share the screen and I'll try to share the application also. Second, let me hide this. Hide this. You guys now should be seeing my home screen at the moment, right? And you should be seeing yourselves. Okay, perfect. So let's take a look at the code base that we had available for this application, for this exercise. So the ones that cloned the project, you guys should have seen that we had at least 3 folders. We had a React front-end application, we had a storybook, and the next post. Let's start by the React front-end application. So the React application is a simple rock, paper, scissors game that we have open right here that we can play. It will display if we not lose, it will count our strikes, and we have a page with records that is a bit random. And Now, what we would like to do on the first part of the exercise. So let's look a bit at our code base. So it's a React project. It has an app that it's building to the index.js. The app just has some React router elements so that you can move from the home to play to records. It also has use query in it because I was playing around and see how I could export the use query. It's more to play around than it was to interact with an API. And here we have the scenes, we have our different pages, we have our game page, we have our home, where we have the links, and we have a records page that will consume from an API to build the page, the different strings, the different records for the strings. Now, what we would like to do with the React frontend. So if you go into the storybook, we'll see that we have a couple of components provided by the storybook. We have a button, a frame, and a loader that are exactly the same components that we'll find on the button folder, on the frame folder, and on the loader folder. And we would like to export these modules, these components, the button at least, and consume the button on the React frontend project. Now, let's look a bit into the components. I built a storybook. We have the button. We have large button. We have a frame, and we have our loader. So let's try to import this. So let's open our Webpack file. Now we have a configuration to build our application through Webpack with the necessary rules, and we are able to build these applications. If we go into the command line, build, to be able to build the application. And here we generated a dist of the application that now on normal instance, it will be loaded into some server, either an Nginx or CDN, and this application will be available to be used. And we can try that with serve, and we'll see not the React application, but the build version of the application. So let's go to the browser again. Now our React application, it's not being served by the React Start script, but by Webpack compiled version, the compiled source that you can find on the dist folder. Now, let's go into our Webpack. And again, like I mentioned, we'll not need a plugin. So let's instantiate the plugin. Sorry. And we'll need the model federation plugin. So let's call for it. We need to pass some configuration into it. Before I pass some configuration, let me import the module. Webpack. And it's on the container subfolder. Okay. What do we need to build or to expose our module? We're going to need a name for the module. So let's give a name to our module, and it will be called components. Okay. We have a name. Now we have to tell him what we want to export, but what components or what files. In this case, files is the better word to describe it, that we want to expose. So let's expose something. Now here we'll need to list which components we want to expose and the path to reach that component. So let's create a button, and this bit is part of the declaration. We need to say the relative position to the module where the button will be hooked. And in this case, our button will be bundled into a variable called button that will be inside the module rock, paper, scissors components. And let's place the path to button components. So we are exposing a module. We need to name that module. the name, the file that this module will be contained. So let's give it the file name. And if we start looking for the subject of module federation with micro frontends, on the literature they usually call it remote entry.js, but this name doesn't need to be remote entry. We will see a lot of that reference, but it's not a necessity. And we have the name, we have the expose, we have the file name, and we are missing one, the dependencies. So now this module has a set of dependencies. We just saw them on the package JSON. Here. And our dependencies are React, React DOM, and React Router DOM. And I can bundle this component without declaring these dependencies on the shared. But I won't take advantage of sharing those dependencies across my frontends. It will be bundled with the dependencies that at the moment installed. So I want to share these dependencies. So we will share them. So I will say that React is something that is shared. And every single one of my dependencies needs to specify a version so that the client knows that it can provide that dependency or not. So let's do a required version and React it on version 18.2. No, to be a bit more dynamic, do this, import the dependencies. So I'm basically importing the dependencies of our application dependencies. Okay. And now I can just, instead of writing down the number, I can just go to the route. And I have 3 more dependencies, so let's create them. Again, I'm only declaring the dependencies because I want my client to provide the instance of React. I don't want to use my React version of this project. Okay, we have this one, we have router, and I have my modules, the provided dependencies declared. Now, React is a special use case. React doesn't work well with multiple instances. React, since it has an internal state to know the state of the tree, which components needs to be re-rendered, it doesn't play well with multiple instances of React. So I can tell to the shared dependencies if I want a new instance or if I want an instance that already exists and should be reused. And that can be done by providing a singleton flag, and I will say that I want a singleton. And I will ensure that every single one of the applications shares the same instance of React, and the same applies for React DOM and React Router DOM. They don't play well with multiple instances. Now, we have declared the name of our module. We have declared what it's exposed from the module. We have a name, and we have a shared dependencies. So we should be able to build this package and serve it. So let's say, sorry, this one, this one, this one. On my storybook, and I should be able to build it. Let's see if it's successful. It's not. So what do I have? I have a typo in one of my properties. Let's try again. And we managed to build our application. Now let's serve our application. And again, I'm using Webpack to serve the building, the dist folder of this project. So let's run the dist folder. And if we look into the log, this one, so I have like a log, we somewhere around here should see that we publish a remote entry file. Let's find out if we have a remote entry. So this is what I'm searching from the dist folder, and we have a remote entry file. And we have the name of the module that we declared, rock, paper, scissors component. We have our necessary style sheets that compose the button. And if I look for a button, not these ones, not these ones, I will find my button here exposed, exactly like I placed on Webpack. That button does something with Webpack and load the button.txt. So we have exported our remote entry file. Now we want to consume this remote entry and use button that the storybook folder provides. So let's go into our Webpack again, and now we're going to the front end. So let me close this one and this one. Okay, here front end. Let's open Webpack, and again same configuration of Webpack, and we need to add our plugin here. And now we want to add the plugin as a consumer, not as a provider. So let's instantiate the plugins. Again, it's the same plugin. Model Federation. Ported from Webpack. For plugin, and now on the other one we were a provider, so we needed name of the file, shared dependencies. Here we are a consumer. We just need to point to something that has we want to consume, and that is done to the property remote. We need to give a name to this property. I will call it rock paper scissors. This name is quite important for the application, because this is the alias that our application will have to reference this module. And it could have a different name, and I could reference it by a different name. So, and now I have to tell where this module is. And we saw that the module was here. So I can go and copy the URL, because the URL is part of the identification of the module. And now I have to tell him what is the name of the variable that I want to consume. So I want to consume this variable, and whatever I want to consume, it will be on this variable. In this case, our amazing button. So let's set that, and we have this weird URL. So we have a name of the variable that we have on the file, and we have the host where the file is. So let's try to compile and see what happens. We open a different window here. Go one down. Users. Open. Build. And serve. So we managed to compile the whole application. Now we'll try to serve it. Second, we have running on 3001. Something running on port 3001, and I'm not sure what it is. That I should be able to serve my application, because I want to serve it on 3001, because that's how I have mapped it on my application. And let's try to open the application and see what we get. Refresh. Okay, and now let's check the network and check if we're able to find the consume of a file called remote entry that we exposed. So if we look into our network, we'll see that we're fetching a remote entry. Sorry, it should be this one. Wait. I'm getting a cached version, because it should have yielded an error. But I'm on the dist version. So, okay. we have the application built, but we forgot to do something. We configure our plugin, but we didn't import a single thing. So let's try that on the button. So this is our amazing button. And let's do all of this. We don't care about this. And I have a new button that I need to import from the other library. How do I do that? I have the import statement. And I will tell that I want to import from the name of the module. In this case, paper, scissors, component. And I want a component. And I can now default. Now, there is a caveat to this component. This component will be loaded asynchronously because we will load the application into the browser, and after that, it's when the browser will have the model from the components library enabled, and we can actually load the component. So we need to use React lazy loading to manage this property of the component, but it's an async component, right? Sorry, it's an error function. And we are exporting our button. So we are consuming our button from the module that we created, and we are exporting on the application that should be able to consume the rest of the buttons. Let's see what we can do. And it's not able to identify where the button is coming from. So and it's suggesting that I want to import my local button, which is not the case. So let's try to find out what it's going on with the definition of the module. Let's see if I have some typo somewhere. Rock, paper, scissors, components, localhost, everything's right. Here, I believe also everything is all right. Rock, paper, scissors, components, / button. And it should be working. So let me just try. If it was some file that I didn't save, no, it's not. Import button from components. No, I don't want to do that. I want to import from item. Go into this configuration. Components, let's say components, button. Okay, it's all right now. So what it's missing? Let me refresh. I have no idea what's wrong, but let's give it a try, something different. Give me a second, let me consult my notes. Where is my window? Where are my notes? It's here. Yep, my notes. Okay, there was some black magic that I forgot. The way I was exporting the button. We consumed, and I think I still have some issue with the way I'm loading the component. Give me a second. Let me check my webcam config, my notes. Where are my these are components, localhost, looks the same. Okay. I think I found the issue, and it's one that it's done, if I'm not mistaken. If now it managed to build, good progress. The issue, it's the declaration of this module. I don't know why, but I think this as a string has impacted the name of the component. The name of the component between the import also has the quotes. Okay. And let's try to serve this application. And see what is the result. So we have launched application. We have some declaration that there is a remote entry to be consumed. And let's see what is the result of our application now. All right, this one needs to be in the root. And I have my remote entry here. This one doesn't, it's not important, but this one is quite important. So what my Webpack did was picking this dependency, the remote entry from the components project, bundled into this project so that it can be loaded on runtime and not at compile time. Now, what can I do to show you that I'm actually consuming the other project? Let's go into our button that we have on the Storybook project. We're going to components button. Let's go into the CSS. And let's try to do something with it. And here I changed the color of my button, and I should be able to see that in effect on the React Frontend project without needing to reboot the React Frontend project. So let's do that. React Frontend is running on the right. Storybook is running on the left. So now I should be able to kill my my Storybook, and I should be able to build and publish my Storybook again. If I go into my front end, what I expect is that the buttons have a different color because I changed the color of the buttons and I'm consuming the buttons directly. So they should have a different color. And I managed to do a deploy of something that changed the style of my application without needing to reload my own application. And that's what it's meant by the independent deploys of the model federation, or what the micro frontend architectures want us to achieve. We're able to deploy a new piece of code that it's integrating into another application without reviewing the main application. Yes?
Okay, sorry to interrupt midway. I was wondering, did you need to refresh the browser in order to see the changes?
Yes, because the remote was being consumed when I load the application, and while the application is loaded, it won't reconsume the module.
Do you know of any way to make the browser know that the module has changed?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you. That was it.
Any more questions? Are you guys following? It's something that I did was really weird, that you guys want some explanation?
Not exactly, but I do have a question, André. So from my understanding, you have like these monorepo set up, right? And you're importing somewhat directly from the other folder, the component. But what I've seen, some people, especially with design systems, is they have like a library that they install. And I was wondering if it's that much different in those type of setups rather than this one with a monorepo.
Yes, this example, it's mostly to export a component and to consume that component. And since in React everything is a component, we'll try next to expose a slightly more complex component than a button. The difference here is that I didn't import from other folder. I published that module and I consumed that module. I didn't go to the file system. I went through the network to fetch that document. And yes, this example, it's kind of an exaggeration, just to have a simple example. But yes, that would be possible, but I would still prefer to do it through packages, mostly because of versioning. So they can control easily the version. But here, as we saw, we didn't need to do anything on the host to get the changes that we did on the micro frontend.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay.
No.
So let's try to do now something a bit more complex. We exported a button. Now let's try to export a null application. That's what we'll do with Micro Frontends. We want to build an application and export them. Let's take a look at our code base again. And again, on the same project, we know already we are a consumer. And you know that we can be a consumer and we can be a producer. And we already know how to set up the configuration of a producer. It needs a name. Let's add a name to the module. It will be the name of our module. Let's give it a file name. We'll call it remote entry because it's possible, and I will show you that they can both coexist. So let's go into, we have the name, we have the file name. Now we need to expose something. Let's try to expose. Like I said, our application or root, it's the app component. So let's try to expose the app component that someone can consume. So let's write. So where does it live? See. Sorry. The root of the app, the components folder. Exactly. And again, I need to tell if I want the consumer to provide some dependencies or not. And in this case, I will also present dependencies, and I will export React and just React and React Helper and the React DOM, because on the consumer we'll use an Next.js instance that doesn't have React Helper on its dependencies. So that application cannot provide that dependency. So we need to rely on the dependencies from the React frontend. So let's add again the React, and again, same story. We need React, we need to have a singleton. And I want the host to share that singleton with the frontend, and I want then the frontend to share the singleton with the components library. Version. Yeah. And now I need one for React DOM. Is and now I will try to rebuild the front end again, and I should be able to see a remote entry being generated. Not this one. Okay. Let's build. Okay, we have some typo. Okay, it's not shared. Sorry. It is. Now it should build. And we built our application. And now what we have on our logs? We have a remote that we are consuming the button component. And we are saying that we are also a provider, that the front end it's also enabled. And we should see the remote entry somewhere around here. So this is the remote entry of the front end, and this is the remote entry of the component. Second. And now we have a module that is a consumer and a producer, and although they have the same name file, the same file name, they are referencing by different names on the configuration. So now I have my front end bundled that I can consume on some other application. So let's try to do that on our Next.js application. So let me do this one and move into our next frontend. So this one for next host. For the host. And this is a Next.js application. And the biggest difference between our classics Create React App projects and this one, it's how we organize the different routes of the project. And on Next.js, this is pretty simple. Each one of these routes each one of these files will produce a route. The ones that don't start with underscore, so app won't have a route, but index will have a route, it will be our root, and records will also have a route called records. Records doesn't have anything interesting, and the index only has the data that the generation, the create project did. Let's start our Next.js host. Let's take a look at what we have. So here, sorry, it should be here. And on our React application, we just have this page as a home and the records page that I mentioned, just rendered records. Now, what we would like to do here, I would like to import my app into the Next project. So Next also has a plugin to compile Micro Frontends. So, it is my and that should be done to the Next config. So into the Next config of Next, we can inject a Webpack building process, and we can inject. You can consume the module produced by the other project. So let's do that. Webpack should receive an initial config and a set of options. Now, this comes from the documentation because Next.js can work as a server and as a client, or better explain. It executes some code on the server before serving a page, and this is why you can provide server-side rendering and some other elements of the optimization of the pages because they are built on the server and sent into the front end, or those pages can be built just on the front end. And the same configuration is applied to both executions. So we have to tell him that we only want to import the components where we are on the client. Otherwise, we don't want to import the components because we are on the server, and on the server we don't have a way of consuming those components. So let's just add that clause here to ensure that we are always on the client and trying to import. And now we have to inject our plugin. Sorry, I'm missing something. Okay, on my config. Let's add our configuration. Bear with me because I don't recall the name of the plugin at the moment. Give me a second. Should be able to do this. Let's raise my mouse. Right here. For the name of the component. It's called Next Federation plugin. Okay. So let's instantiate a new Next Federation plugin. This plugin is still using Federation. Down below it we use this Webpack model Federation. But since Next.js bundles things in a certain way, this plugin ensures that the modules that we're importing are being placed on the dist folder on the right places. With the model Federation, with the other plugin, we'll need to tinker a bit in where we want to place these configuration. So this is a wrapper around the previous component that will inject the right things into the right places in Next.js, because they have a slightly different anatomy, and they have a proper way of working. While Create React App, it's more lenient and not as restrictive. And again, here the properties are exactly the same. Let's give it we don't need a name because we don't need to export, we just need to import things. So let's give it a remote, and let's say that I want to consume my rock paper scissors frontend. The name of the variable it has the same name, at http 2001 slash what was the name of the file? It was entry something. Remote entry, sorry. And to consume a module, this should be all we need. We have the module declared on our side. We can import rock, paper, scissors frontend, and we have the dependencies where to consume it. So let's go into our index and let's import just the app. So same deal. App. Which should be the hub. Slash app. Now, you recall on the React project, we had to use React Lazy to lazy load the component and ensure that we are prepared to deal with a component that it won't be present on the application, on the browser. It won't be available before that. Here we don't have React Lazy, but we have a similar function called dynamic. And it should function in the exact same way. And now it should be able to come into the middle of the DOM and just test my app. Let's give it a try and try to reload our Next.js application. Let's reload dynamic. Try again. See if it complains about the same thing. It doesn't know where the plugin is coming from. That makes sense. Where is my front end? Okay, I didn't import. Imported. And this component, where does it live? Next. Lives on the next version slash next. Did I spell it wrong? I don't think so. Okay. Why are you complaining about? Right. Now we have plugin. We should be able to start our next application. Okay, cannot find our application. Let's double check our configuration. That's here. Let's check our configuration of consumer, rock, paper, scissors, HTTP, localhost 3001. If I click like this, I should be able to see the files, right? Because I'm not seeing like this, and I should be able to see our remote entry. I'm not seeing our remote entry, so something is wrong with the front end. Most likely think I killed the front end. Oh. And that's okay. Let me start my front end. Let's try again to build the application. I think there is something wrong with it, but let's find out. Okay. No, doesn't. Okay, there's still something. Rock, paper, scissors front end. What did I forget to mention? What am I missing? Missing. I don't think I'm missing anything. Oh, I know what I'm missing. I just mentioned it. So on Next, we have the ability to build components on the server and just serve the HTML. And the dynamic is quite used for that property, so that we can try not here. And it by default, it tries to build this component on the server, on the Next server. But the Next server cannot consume this module because the module of the frontend, it's only available on the browser. That's how we publish and that's how we consume it. So we have to say that there is no server-side rendering for this component. Try, see how it plays. It's a bit more happy now, but we don't want server-side rendering. It's still not able to import or element. So let's look what's going on. So what can you do to validate what's going on? We can validate if we have the remote entry. We do. It's here. We need to validate what we are exposing with our frontend. Close others. And close this one. Hope paper scissors frontend, remote entry. There is no quotes here. Okay, remote frontend up. And we have a name. So this configuration seems all right to me. Source up.
The exposures shouldn't it be just the name app and then you will have the path?
No, the documentation suggests to put the relative path so that that appears also on the module.
Mm-hmm.
So let's import. Let me check if I can find something different on my notes that could explain what's going on. No, it's in here that makes sense. It will on my note. No, that should not matter. Wait. What did I do? Ah, what did I do wrong? So I created a plugin, but I didn't give to anyone this plugin. Right. Plugins. Essential config plugins dot push. This is an array, and let's place this on the array. That's just was missing plugin config plugins. Okay, give it another try. See if we have or now we are able to import the module. Seems like it's happy. Let's see what's going on the front end. What do I have on my create React app? So I have, this is still my next application. This is still what I had at the start. It's everything that is above the app. I kept it on purpose so that we could see that we are injecting our whole application, our whole React application into just a single page of the next front end. So, and I can still play. And I can still go into the records page. Perfect. And I'm also able to change the colors of the buttons and see that propagated to all the projects. Let's try that. So on our config, let's pick our button and let's change some other color. Again, let's deploy our component library. Component library on the left, front end on the right. I'll just kill this one. and build and restart. Build it. And let's search. Okay. Now let's first see our front end. We had the TL. Now we should have what ping. It had worked. We didn't restart our Next.js application, and we should see the same change propagated into this front end. And that's the case. So now we managed to have a component, a project with components that exposes a module, that it's consumed by our front end, that exports all the application, and then it's hosted on our next application. And now to bundle more front ends, it's basically repeating the process with more front ends. So we have a next front end that doesn't have much. It just has a page called records that does just this, records, nothing more. And this application, let me check. Okay. And this application doesn't do much with in terms of exporting. And while I was playing around with Next, I found that it was really comfortable to build a set of pages in Next and export them into the host application without that much hassle. So that's the last thing I would like to try to do. It's to build a new application on a different Next project, the Next front end, and import into the Next host project. So let's give it a try. And this will be the last exercise that I would like to do. So now we can be a bit lazy here. It's basically the same. Let's do this. The configuration is always the same. No, we don't have a remote because this will be a producer. We'll have a name. And we'll have a file name. And we'll have an exposes. If the memory doesn't, it's not betraying me, we also need a remote. So let's give it a name, rock, paper, scissors, next front end, good name, exactly the same name, and expose or records page. So this record lives in dot pages, right, check pages, records, and pages in the root of the project. Let me try to compile this project. Okay, so come to here. Next content, perfect. Let's see if I can throw a yarn dev into it. Okay, running on port 3000. I have something running on port. No, I don't have. Why can't I use port 3000 to serve my application? Oh, sorry, it's not the port. It was this one. We don't care about this one. I think it's this. Check. What's wrong?
It's remote, right?
Yes, it's remote. Patch 10.4 overender. Okay, build, perfect. And now let's just check our localhost 3003, and it should have normal application, and we care about our records page. Let's just say record. Try to import now this page into the host project. So we have our host project right here. Next host. Let's go into our next config and rename it next frontend. Next frontend, and we are routing on port 3000. Let me validate that. Right. Here, next it's a bit more complicated, and we cannot just export the root. We have a special path for it. That is, what was the name of the path? Let me see if I recall it. It was static. Like this. Cut that. Let's try this pseudo path. Something was already broken from the root. No, it's not this one. Let's see if I can recall it. Let's recall this. Not exactly recall, because next has a special folder where this component should be placed. And I don't recall which one. Let me check if I found the documentation. Exactly. Okay. It's almost there. Sorry. Chunks. And we go to the remote entry. And now we should be able to build and see the config.
Maybe you need to put camel case. It's
It
capitalized here. I
is.
don't know.
No, file name should have this
And
configuration.
static is there is without slash. That is that.
Oh, good point. Let's see if now it's more happy with me. And because it's usually happier, let's see if this module appears. Sorry, it should be static / chunks. Or remote. Let's give it a try. Because I think everything is all right, it should be able to work. Okay, let's try to import this module into this one and try to use it, just the last bit. So let's go into our records page. We have an ugly page here. Let's remove everything and let's play. Dynamic, and we need to import. Okay, paper, scissors, and slash. And that would be record.
Edit everything with underscores.
Yes. And I'm using underscores on purpose because the model federation, when it found the name with hyphens, it will spread them apart. I'm pretty sure that they often have some meaning when we specify the dependencies, but I didn't find anything that was telling me what it was. It was mentioning that property, but it didn't tell me straight why the hyphens were not all right. And then it will appear just rock, for example, instead of rock, paper, scissors, at the name of the module. Let me try, I need something else. Okay, sorry. Another one place. This was everything that was put here. Should be on this one.
Do you also need the SSR false in this one?
Yes. Thank you. Side rendering. And we have a component, we have a configuration, we have an import. Let's give it a try. If it is, let's place this running. Let's kill this. This one, this one. This is the host that I'm killing now. I'm placing it to run. Let's see if it deals well with the new dependency. Seems okay. Let me just, because I believe that both pages have the same content. So let me just place. This one also. And let's see if we can load our records page from the other frontend. So our frontend still exists. What happens if I go to records? Broke, let me check. If I can identify the issue. Remote entry. Okay, that's a fair point. We don't have this route. Let's go into our host and we just place remote entry, but this is not good because we need to add the static chunks remote entry. So this is the configuration. Started, let's see if we have a records page. Still no records page because it cannot open this entry. Okay. Should be able to see it here. Not seeing it. Let's check this issue yesterday also. Yes. And we are missing a prefix here that's not present on the other side. So this now should give us some library. But first, we have the rock, paper, scissors next content. Let's look at our next as we refresh the config. Also refresh this one. And let's see if now we have some records to show. And now we are able to import the records from the other project, or the next project, that has a self-contained page. This page only has an element, but could be a null application, could be the app again. And we are able to tie that pretty straight into a new route on the new application. And I believe this is fairly comfortable to develop this way because we have our next micro frontend that we work on in itself isolated. And I believe the structure of pages helps building the application in a more clear way in terms of what pages are. And we can then export those pages one by one, or we can export them in bundles like we did for the app. But in Next.js, you can do both. I like the experience of exporting the pages from directly one page to another to another project, but we can bundle them together and just import the whole application and then play around with it. And this was the last aspect of our project. So what did we build so far? We have a next host that we are seeing at the moment that it's importing two applications, this React app and this Next.js app. And we have our React application consuming a set of components exposed by the Storybook project. And this also is also the state of the branch MEF final that we can also find on the repository. I believe I will double check if on the GitHub we have that branch, but this is the final result of the that branch that you can play around, and feel free to play around with it. I think it's quite interesting, this technology. I cannot promise is that model federation will be a go-to tool to build micro frontends, but if you know how to build one with model federation, I think it helps to clarify or how much you know about micro frontends. And the other frameworks or the other tools that I saw, they always felt like they were one layer above the model federation. So I understood that they work because underlying they have the model federation principle below it that allow us to get how they are bundled together. Any questions, guys? Sorry for going a bit over the hour. I wanted this last bit to go. Yes.
Hey, sorry. Let me just move a bit further because Rui is being loud. I was gonna ask that what you showed here. You use Next.js, right? And that's a framework for React. How will that change if you wanted to use other frameworks to aggregate the applications?
So here we have a React project. That is the first one where the game is played, and the next it's the host, the one that it's holding the whole application, and we have the next front end, the last bit that we hooked into the host. But here we have always React, but we have React built with two different frameworks.
Okay.
It will be different from using. I could hook here an Angular project. That won't be a problem to hook. I can, as long as I can bundle that project.
As long as you, do you need to use Webpack, or was that a preference?
No, we need to use Webpack because model federation is
a Webpack. Okay.
For Webpack, it's a architecture for Webpack.
Okay. Okay. So in this case, your host. So the next is what you're using for aggregation.
Yes, Next as an aggregator. I could use create React app as an aggregator and use React router, and then inside of that router, I would say it's this component that it's consumed from another micro frontend, for example,
or any other framework that supports importing modules.
Yeah, because these modules are just JavaScript at this stage.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
as long as there is a JavaScript runtime, like the one in the browser, they'll will work.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Can you just show where the next frontend is imported on the host?
Yes.
It's in the records
Here
component,
it's
right?
yes. Here is the declaration,
Yeah.
and then it's on the records page.
And
You cannot open the records page. Okay. So no, not this one. This is the one that it's provided. I want the one that is. I want this one. Can I open?
restart colors.
Okay. Something is terribly wrong with my phone.
Maybe you should ask for a new computer.
This computer has 2 months.
Well,
Very
years
well.
old.
Like, where it was consumed on those, right? Pages. So the way it's been consumed,
Yeah.
it's the import and then just export. And that's how we can.
And does it need to?
No, doesn't it?
The file name is the same, but the one that is used, it's on the host, right?
It doesn't matter. The name of the variable doesn't matter. What it matters is the name of the file. Records.txt cria uma route chamada records, not the name of the file. The name of the file doesn't. The name of the component doesn't matter to create a route. What it matters, it's the name of the file.
Yeah, but the name of the file in the front end, in the next front end, doesn't mean anything, right? It's just doesn't mean anything for the routes.
It means it also serves on the records page.
Yeah, okay.
So
But you need to import.
yes, so on the 3003, it's our next.
Yeah, on the next application. Yeah.
We have the records subroute, and the record, it's the name of the file. So it's not the name of the exposed component, it's the name of the file. And if I had a new file called contacts, I could go to a route called contacts. The exception to the name is the index, but it's related just to the slash. Any more questions, guys? No? Okay, perfect. I think we can end the recording. How do I end the...
Okay, mesh.
Stop recording. Ok, já parei a filmagem. Se quiserem fazer perguntas, estejam à vontade.